Select Committee, Harriett Baldwin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. What an extraordinary experience that just was. I heard a shadow spokesman for nearly 20 minutes ranting on about tax hikes, but at the same time not proposing a single concrete economic policy, and indeed an opposition bench that has entirely gone AWOL. Where are they, Madam Deputy Speaker? There is no one on the opposition benches this afternoon. They are not going to oppose a single measure in this finance bill, and I have scoured Wikipedia, Madam Deputy Speaker, for any policy they may have come up with in terms of taxation. All I have found is that they're proposing an additional £28 billion in borrowing. That is simply more taxes for our children and grandchildren to pay in the future. I have also spotted that they do have 2 additional new taxes they think would be a good idea. And those 2 taxes are the ones that were outlined from the opposition box, the non-dom taxation, which I understand analysis shows would actually be a net subtraction in terms of tax revenue to the UK economy. And then furthermore, they are proposing to be the only country in the world that taxes education, with a tax on education that actually would increase the cost to the state and, again, fail to pay for itself. So that's my scour of Wikipedia, Madam Deputy Speaker. I am now going to move on from discussing the opposition rant and talk about the excellent points that my honourable friend made from this side, because it is the view of the... I give way to the honourable lady.
I'm standing in part to illustrate that I am here, actually, Madam Deputy Speaker, because the Honourable Lady just said there was nobody on this side, and here I am, and I've been intervening on both the opening speeches, so I hope she'll take that back. And also, could she clarify what she's talking about in terms of a tax on education?
Well, the Honourable Lady is absolutely the honourable exception to prove my rule, because she is indeed engaging thoroughly on the debate from the void that is the opposition benches this afternoon. And the tax on education is her party's frontbench policy, which is to add VAT to school fees. So she may not be aware of that policy, but it's not a good one, and I recommend that she influence her front bench to try and drop that. But turning to my honourable friend's excellent remarks, it is the view of the Treasury Select Committee that the tax system in the UK is far too complicated. And we were concerned earlier this year and mentioned it in a report about the abolition of the Office for Tax Simplification, because we do want to see the Treasury team look at more ways in which they can simplify the tax system. We also published a report on tax reliefs, which says that there are actually over 1,000 tax reliefs in our tax system, many of which the Treasury doesn't even know what impact they have or how much they're costing the Exchequer. They really should be thought of like expenditure lines, and they really should be looked at a bit more carefully. And we think that there have been some steps announced in these measures and indeed in last week's National Insurance Bill, which do some good in that regard. So I just want to highlight those. I give way.
Grateful to the honourable member. I just wondered if she wanted to comment in relation to what she was saying about NI, that overall the richest fifth of households will be £1,000 better off on average by 2027, whereas the lowest fifth will are only set to gain £200. Does this make it the progressive autumn statement that has been claimed?
I also attest to the fact that she is the second backbencher, and that brings in total to the two who are visible to me at this time on the opposition benches, although I think that the new member for Mid Bedfordshire is also providing the shadow PPS role. Indeed, national insurance is a terrible regressive tax as it stands, and I wholeheartely endorse measures that reduce that burden and indeed simplify things. So she has pointed out that it is work in progress, but I do think she should welcome the abolition of Class 2 national insurance. It has simplified the national insurance system, and indeed in the budget in the spring we got the welcome simplification in terms of the lifetime allowance charge. We got a great simplification in terms of childcare entitlement with the announcement of a much wider offer in terms of free childcare. And these are simplifications that have been broadly welcomed. In this finance bill, Madam Deputy Speaker, there are further welcome simplifications. And indeed, the Financial Secretary was kind enough to write to me yesterday to summarise his principles for simplification of the tax system. He wants tax rules that have a clear, consistent rationale. He wants taxes that are easy for taxpayers to get right. He wants taxpayers to be able to understand at key life cycles points what they need to do, and he wants tax policy that does not distort the decisions of taxpayers and result in poorly informed choices. In summary, he wants the government to have a tax system to be simpler, fairer, and to support growth. And he is kind in his letter, which we will be publishing on the Treasury Committee website this afternoon, to show some further simplifications that are in the remarks he made earlier: the cash basis for small businesses, for example, improving the design and making tax digital, the simplification of the R&D tax credits, which we welcome, and simplifying capital allowances and making them more permanent. There are other measures for individuals which the Financial Secretary didn't highlight, but I will draw to the House's attention. There is going to be an increase in threshold for individuals with income tax through pay-as-you-earn to file a self-assessment return. That's going up to £150,000, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think that's going to be important because obviously more and more people are going to be caught otherwise with the freezing of the thresholds. And from April 2024, that threshold gets abolished altogether. There were also simplifications as far as ISAs are concerned in this finance bill. There are measures to simplify customs processes. And so, in summary, I think his heart is in the right place, the Financial Secretary, in terms of simplifying things. And there's no question that the R&D tax credits were being abused. So I really just want to mention, Madam Deputy Speaker, in my closing remarks, some of the future opportunities for simplification that I'd like to draw to the Financial Secretary's attention, while welcoming the fact that, as we called for in our report on venture capital tax relief, that has been extended in this finance bill to 2035. We very much welcome that. The future ones that I would love to see the Financial Secretary focus on are to do with some of the unintended disincentives to taking on additional work and additional hours that exist throughout the tax system at all sorts of different income points. We've made huge strides in terms of simplifying that for those on universal credit, making every extra hour of work pay. But once you get into the tax system, there are some cliff edges and high marginal tax rates which deter people from working more. I want to highlight two in particular, Madam Deputy Speaker. First of all, we're doing this inquiry at the moment into sexism in the city on the Treasury Committee, and some of the evidence that we've had has been around how we could improve some of those marginal tax rates. There is this child benefit taper, which was brought in 10 years ago with my wholehearted support, the right thing to do. in 2013. I now think it is time to look again at how that interacts with the free childcare offer and look at the opportunity that there is for getting rid of that taper altogether and simplifying the tax system, which at the moment is sending a terrible deterrent to families that get caught in it. You can have, if you have a lot of children, Madam Deputy Speaker, you can have a marginal withdrawal tax rate of over 100% if you're making between 50 and 60,000. It's become far too complex. It's acting as a deterrent to many women to taking on more work, and I think with the childcare offer that we now have, it's time to look again at that. The other thing I just want to throw into the mix is again evidence that we've had in our Sexism in the City inquiry. Bear in mind, this is the sector in the country where the pay is the highest. Indeed, the pay gap is the highest, but also some of the best paid careers for women are in financial services. However, we're hearing time and time and again that because of the tax-free childcare cut off at 100,000, that there are women who are choosing to work less than a full week as a result of that. So because of these thresholds being frozen, it's having these side effects, and I do urge the Financial Secretary, as he thinks about fiscal events next year, to look at those two potential simplifications in particular. Thank you.
SNP